Hey, hello everyone.
Hello.
Hello from the team. We're just kind of cracking right into it because we haven't made any plans, have we? We said we would try and plan things,
Yes.
but we never do. We never do.
I see that Arty's on the bottom, so
Arty's the bottom again, or for once. So how's your week been, guys?
It's been great. We're here. How about you guys?
Yeah, it's been good. It's been a kind of a crazy week of just busy all the time. I mean, I keep getting more and more stories in that so many. Like yesterday, I just published one by a actor. Actually, it was this morning. An actor who was telling me about who wrote about the just extraordinary contortions that are now being put into casting calls, with organizations like, Equity, and there's this place called Mandy Actors. And they're looking for, they're describing women as cis females and all that sort of stuff, and they're saying they want women or people who identify as women. I'll give you, here's something that really annoys me, okay? This drives me so far up the wall, I could barely deal with it. But you know the show, The Queen's Gambit, or whatever it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, that apparently has a trans woman playing a woman in the first episode, I believe.
Yeah.
And I believe,
Yes, I have seen it, and my husband was that's a trans woman. However,
yes.
there was no mention that it could have been a trans woman playing a trans woman character. However,
right. Okay. That's fine. But here's my thing. Well, here's my thing. When Scarlett Johansson was going to play a trans woman, in fact, when any woman is going to play a trans woman, there is an immediate kind of, campaign to get them to drop the role and apologize. Because while we're supposed to believe trans women are women, we're simultaneously supposed to believe that women can't play trans women. It's fucking infuriating.
I'll be very interested if they make another sequel of live action Scooby-Doo. Who will they get to play Scooby-Doo? Will they need a furry?
That's great.
Amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. So that's where I've been.
Because honestly, bloody loads of them that stalk my feed.
Oh yeah, well, someone said that Trans Awareness Week is like very furry at the moment. Everyone tweeting with the hashtag. Every second person is a furry. I mean, it's quite fun. I remember one of my favorite moments was Laurie Penny, saying something like, "Leave furries alone." Leave furries alone. It's like literally they're acting like they're a racial minority.
Yeah, I've gotten that too. People like getting so offended when you rib furries. It's like, give me a break. Furries are not an oppressed, vulnerable, group.
Well,
it is a very mockable thing to dress up in a ridiculous costume and engage in sexual games with that. It's like
there's a
I will never not mock furries. Like, give me a break.
No, you're right. It is mockable. Now, they're perfectly entitled to do so. I have no problem with the fact that they want to do so, but they are not an oppressed group. They're not an oppressed group, and I have a problem with doing it with, like the pride furries, for instance, with their little dogs in public. That obviously I have a problem with that. Everyone should have a problem with that. However, if they want to, and indulge in what seems to be rather an expensive looking habit, if you look at some of these costumes.
Yeah. I mean,
I wonder if they all move to Orlando so they can work at amusement parks in those costumes.
In the old days, you just had to get a copy of Penthouse. Now you have to buy a costume, insert yourself into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I promise our audience we did not plan to talk about furries extensively in this episode. This wasn't going to be the furry one.
It's it's okay talking about them. The thing that's really hard to do is to show any photographs of them or videos of them, because you cringe so much that your head would disappear into your neck. It is the most embarrassing hobby that I've ever seen. Like, you remember, Helen, in the old days, people used to make fun of train spotters. Oh my God. Oh my God! If train spotters would bully furries, you know, and I have a theory as well. If you notice, as I say, they're all turning up on the Trans Awareness Week thing, and like, I have a theory. Like, really, furries are in terms of nerd culture, for very good reason, are the bottom of the pyramid. Right? They are despised by everyone. Okay, and I think furries saw putting pronouns in their bio and stuff like this as a way to get to flip the pyramid. So now they're on top.
They've done a brilliant job as well. I mean, they have done a brilliant job of it. You know, people cannot not champion them. If you're going to champion that idea of sort of oppressed minorities who are who they say they are, then they have to. What astonishes me is that they have.
Yeah.
Well, it goes right back to like you said, when you see those images, you cringe because they're so cringeworthy. But there's this thing going on with liberal white guilt, that when a liberal person sees an image and cringe, they feel so guilty for having cringed. They have to sort of pretend that that person is vulnerable somehow and attack anyone else. You know what I mean?
I think that might be true. Yeah, that's very good. That's a very good point. I actually joined a Reddit sub called Cringetopia. And it's mostly, I mean, it probably wouldn't exist if it wasn't for TikTok videos, but the furry stuff, I mean, it really is, it's hard to watch. And it's kind of, in fact, the whole sub, I always scroll through it and I think, no, I can't watch that. Won't be watching that one because it's so embarrassing, you know, these poor kids who are growing up online. There's a very sweet one where it's like a kid and he's holding the phone out to himself, you know, and it says something like it's written up on the screen, him nodding and going, "So you disrespect women?" And then he goes, "I will find you." And it's so sweet. It's so sweet, you know. And then again, there's all these other ones that are just, you know, the usual embarrassing kind of. It's really kids just saying, "I'm an individual," you know, which is fine, but it's been kind of corporatized.
Yes, I do find it astonishing the way, I mean, I know people like to think that they're the first generation to have discovered things, like, you know, every generation is the first generation to have discovered sex. Although, to be fair, you know, in a furry costume does put a new slant on it. However, it's, you know, you see these kids who now feel, you know, they would have been, I don't know, like punks or goths.
Yeah.
Or, you know, however, now they like the idea of being in an oppressed minority because of it. But I'm very disappointed with grown-up adults who play into this idea, the victimhood, you know, tell these kids that they are absolutely oppressed and people do want to erase their existence and want to kill them, and that they will be committing suicide. You know, loads of them will want to commit suicide. It's unconscionable the way that they've taken this. What would be a nice, you know, a nice sort of subculture of people, sort of gender non-conforming kids, like there always have been. I mean, I remember I wore my brother's Jaws T-shirt to primary school every day for a whole year with jeans, and, you know, refused to play with girls. But you know, so nothing is new apart from the idea that now you're so oppressed because of it. And I do feel really sorry for the children growing up thinking that they don't have the life experience to know that this isn't actually true.
Yeah, I was talking to someone today about this, and those like, the thing is, I think on the other side, let's say we're on two sides, our side and the other side. On the other side of this debate are the vast majority of people who say we're bigots and think that we're evil are good people. You know, they're decent people and they're trying to do the right thing. But the problem is that in amongst these decent people are a bunch of manipulative narcissists who are telling them things like, oh, they're trying to kill us. Oh, people will commit suicide if you listen to them. And the good people are believing these narcissists. That's the problem, you know.
Of course, because good people don't want to feel that they're going to contribute to the suicide of kids. Of course they don't. And most people haven't necessarily thought through the implications of being told, well, you know, you need to not talk about this because you'll contribute to the suicide of people, because most people haven't ever come across this sort of manipulative. I mean, I had never come across it. I'd never read the Samaritan guidelines. I'd never understood about coercive control until I came to Twitter.
Yes. No, it's true.
You know, when I think, I mean, I've said many times when I first joined Twitter, I had 2 accounts. One was my normal account, and the other one was where I wanted to explore the idea of sort of feminism that women like Sarah Dighton and Julie Binder were being called TERF for. And I thought, well, I am, you know, I'll have a new account, and I explored it there. And it was through that I began to see all of these issues, but things, you know, I'd never thought about it before. So as you say, these good people, I mean, it's the easy thing to do, isn't it? They think it's the nice thing to do.
Yes, that's it. You know, it's and you know, I kind of have this experience of sharing things with people, and they literally don't want to. They don't want to look at it. They don't want to engage it in the same way that I won't look at the Cringetopia videos. They just can't. You know, they know that the consequences are too high. You know, it's interesting. Someone told me recently as well that they've been trying to tell other people about this, and the response they get is, if this is all true, then why don't I know about it?
Yes.
Actually, let's talk a little bit about that, because that's a kind of interesting question. Like, there's several reasons why people don't know about it. I'll give 2 quick ones and see if you can see if you can build on it. The first is liberal leaning press has a complete blackout on negative stories about this subject. That's number 1. Number 2 is some of the stories are so extraordinary that people just can't believe they're true.
That's right.
Yes.
Arty, do you have anything to add to that?
I think there's the other thing is, when people hear these stories, they will just assume. There's 2 things I want to add to that. One is that when people hear terrible stories, they will assume that they're outlier stories. That to be a good, virtuous person, this is a vulnerable group, trans people, and there's bad apples in every
vulnerable group.
And so it's just cherry picking the bad apples. And immediately what everyone always does is transpose the word trans in their head with gay, saying, what if you said that about gay people? What if you said that about gay people? What if you said that about gay people? Is all you ever hear. So that's one thing. People just assume, well, this is just like gays, and I won't allow myself to hear anything bad about gays, you know. So obviously the same applies to this other group, which is a completely different demographic. 1. 2 is that it's physically painful. It's like when Scientologists are exposed to criticism of the Church of Scientology, it's very easy for them to shut it out because it's physically painful. If there's something, if you have a value that you value very much, a value that you value.
Don't worry.
Anyways, it's painful to let go of it, and it's painful to challenge it. It's physically painful. You know, the stress is very, very upsetting. So people it's very easy to avoid processing information that challenges something that you value very strongly. So those are 2 things that really, really affect people. It's very, very, very hard. This is something that me and my group have been working on, drafting a brief for the LGBT Alliance Canada to challenge Bill C6, trying to word it in a way to introduce these very complex issues to an audience, legislators who probably have no idea that any of this is going on, and knowing that if you come on too strong and if you make too many if you show them too much of the problems going on within the trans community and how it's conflicting so severely with the gay community, that your imagined reader will just shut it off, right? Will just ignore it and put it away. So it's been very, very difficult trying to bring up these issues to outsiders in such a way that you have to be very, very careful to word it in such a way as to not spring that bear trap shut, cause them to that panic to go off for them to just shut off.
Yes.
It's just like arguing with a Scientologist. You have to be very, very careful.
Well, it's
never
brilliant.
Imply. Yeah.
It's brilliant that you're actually doing it. I'm so pleased that you're mounting this challenge. Well done. I think that's absolutely fantastic. But also that you have this understanding of how it works. I think that's an incredibly important understanding that will help enormously. I think in this challenge. The other thing
it's Tom Cruise we have to thank. My bizarre fascination with Tom Cruise is now actually useful in the real world somehow.
Oh, well done. Well done,
if only my fascination with Scarlett Johansson worked out in the same way.
Well, never say never.
But the other thing I wanted to add, Graham, one of the other reasons is that people haven't heard of it is because it's women that have been raising it for years. It's women, and people, haven't listened to women. I've had men recently, after J.K. Rowling waded into the fray, say, look, this is something really new. It's just raised its head. You've just jumped on the bandwagon and you've come here to say this, it'll be over in a minute. And you're like, the only reason you've heard of it is because women have been laboring this fucking point for like 10 years. I have trans activists. I see them talking about me in sort of threads saying, like she's been doing this for 10 years, as if that's a really bad thing. And it is a bad thing, but not for the reasons that they think. They think that I've been, oh my God, look at her, she's been wasting her time for 10 years. Whereas I feel as if it's been incredibly important that, we have to look at like women like me who've been doing it for years, and the women that came before me, like Julie Bindel, who we all need to thank for raising this, and then more and more people come on board. And finally, we are getting mainstream traction. It is, like I think we've said this before, nobody can say that this is now nut-picking niche stuff. Everyone knows about it.
Yes. Well, I did a piece recently. I did a piece recently about what I call the central outliers, and the best, all these examples, like Amy Challoner is the best one. Amy Challoner on a trans advisory board at Stonewall during the years when gender identity ideology was going into places like girl guiding,
Yes.
and Amy Challoner was sneering when Helen Watts was fired as a girl guide leader for objecting to the fact that now males can go on overnight trips with young girls, and the parents don't have to be fucking notied. Excuse my language.
And fair play to her. Hats off to her for doggedly pursuing this, not letting anyone, not letting anyone sort of silence her. Just despite the fact that they got rid of her from the Girl Guides, just raising the issue and continually making the point. I've such admiration for women like that.
I love Helen, and I keep trying to raise it, but again, it's one of these things that you say, look, this woman was actually fired from the Girl Guides for objecting to men and males being like, with young children.
About this. Yes.
Well, people have to understand that part of it is that they still think that a trans woman is a genuine, sympathetic transsexual who's had an actual sex change and who, for all intents and purposes in society, should be treated, socially as just another woman. I would say fine in that case. What they don't understand is the definition of a trans woman has been expanded so that it now means any man, anytime who feels sufficiently feminine to themselves that they can declare that they are a woman.
Yes.
But let me go back to Challoner just for a second, because I just don't know. I wrote to someone in the press recently and I just said, what does it take to make this a scandal? Okay, the Stonewall have been advising institutions all over the UK to allow men who identify as women and have had no surgery, no transition beyond saying I'm transitioned, to be with young girls in these situations. Okay, and that was done at a time when someone who appears to be in the pedophile ring was working for Stonewall. Okay, we've done this organization. It's on my website. We've done this investigation. It's on my website. It is very, very clear that Amy Challoner is in a relationship with two pedophiles. Okay, and Amy Challoner was the son of another pedophile, and we believe that the father introduced Amy to those much older men, and this person was in Stonewall for years. At a time when Stonewall were getting women like Helen Watts fired from their positions.
This is true. Now, I think it's really clear that Amy Challoner has had a very difficult childhood.
That was so shocking when we saw that she had posted at 14 years old fetishistic sexualized imagery to her Twitter account. Right? Yes. That is just shocking.
Yeah.
However, there is no excuse for Stonewall, the Greens, the Lib Dems not to take this seriously and not to think there's a problem here. A problem not necessarily initially of Amy's making. However, there's a massive problem, and there's a massive problem with them for not doing their due diligence, not listening to women, because women were raising this. This is not new. We've known about this. We've known about this for years, and they've just continued, haven't they? In fact, they've doubled down.
Well, Andy Healy is still suspended from the Green Party, and there's a number of people in the Green Party who have to apologize to Andy Healy. This goes back to what you were saying about the Scientologist thing, Arty. There's a lot of people in this fight. They include people who've dropped friends and family members for being TERFs or whatever, and they are going to have to apologize. They are going to have to apologize at some point for defending people like Amy Challoner while exiling from polite society people like Andy Healy who are trying to raise the alarm.
Yes.
It's just outrageous, and anyway, sorry.
No, it really is the emperor's new clothes. This whole goes back to the cringe-worthy thing. It's just so blindingly obvious that Amy Challoner was a mountain of red flags. But the more obvious it is, like the more cringy it is, the more the liberal guilt transmutes the more obviousness into attacking everyone else. Remember, Graham, you were always talking about how when you show people shocking images of just obvious males who aren't even trying, and their reaction is to want to defend them and protect them. That's exactly, this is the liberal guilt. When you see something that you're not supposed to see, you feel bad about it, and you turn that around into attacking everyone else more.
Yeah, James, there's a writer called James Felton, and he did that this week. This bloke in a women's toilet, it looks like taking photographs of themselves with their dick out, and putting them online, and women say, well, fuck that, and there's definitely not a woman, and it's gross to share dick pics online. And James Felton, this guy, is defending the bears. It's like, what the hell is going on? You're so woke. You're now defending flashers.
Yes.
Yes.
It's just, I know. I get it. I've had quite a number of oddly new accounts this week seem to have been sort of doggedly asking me the same question, because I asked the same question. So they think it's reasonable to then ask me the same question on every thread that I'm on, saying anyway the same question. But it's what I can't understand is that when you do get into this conversation, they absolutely, the defense of their argument, because I thought it was because people don't like to be proved wrong. Arty, I hadn't really considered it from more of a sort of psychological aspect like that you've been explaining to us. But I just find it incredible that people are actually defending the right of males to be able to undress in changing rooms with women and girls, because they simply, well, as I thought, don't want to be proven wrong. It is mind-blowing to see this happening in real time, and constantly, again and again and again, it happens. And I just can't understand that mindset. It is. I mean, I don't like to be proven wrong. I put my hand up. However, I am. Am I happy to say sometimes that I'm wrong? Well, obviously, everyone is wrong at times. And you have to sort of accept sometimes that you're wrong and think about it and think, okay, well, maybe this will strengthen my argument for next time. But I simply don't understand the idea of saying yes.
Yeah, I mean, let's try to put ourselves in their position.
Be able to
do they think that we all want to live in a world where there aren't crimes against women and girls, and where women and girls aren't feeling vulnerable around penises? We would like to live in that utopia, but you don't get there by just declaring it so. You have to fix society first. And that seems to be part of the problem too, is these people are saying, I believe in a utopian world where, women aren't vulnerable around men. Well, that's nice, but that world doesn't actually fucking exist yet.
No, But what's also interesting is that they believe in the utopian world where women are no longer scared of penises. So therefore, the men who are scared of penises can undress with the women. They don't go back any further to the utopian world of, well, let's just try and eliminate sexual violence by men altogether. No. The utopian world stops at the point where they can justify men undressing with girls.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's just
There's a guy in Dublin who had me on his podcast. His name is Jarlath Regan. He's a comic comedian. And he had me on his podcast, and then obviously there was a lot of pushback from trans rights activists. And he said to me once something extraordinary, like, I just don't have the same bad impression of men that you have, Graham.
Oh, how privileged is this guy?
What?
That's nice.
It's like Me Too just happened. Harvey Weinstein just happened. Yes. Peter Sutcliffe, Jimmy Savile, the fact that there's something like 80,000 men in the UK prison estate and 3,000 women, Yeah. And this guy just thinks you're giving men a bit of a hard deal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I do. Be nice. Let's just pretend all this stuff never happens. That is the worst thing. This is what when victims are ignored because it makes everyone uncomfortable, like the Feston, the situation. It's just so horrible.
Yeah, but I see the same people. This is what I don't understand: is I see people who have finally got past the first one. The Harvey Weinstein. Believe her. I see people who actually tweet things like "Believe her, me too." Who will also say, what are you talking about? That there is no problem. There is no problem here. You can't exclude a whole group based on the actions of one or two. And I think the cognitive dissonance there is extraordinary. I'd much rather the old-fashioned misogyny of men saying, you just hate men. You just a feminist who hates men and there's no problem, as opposed to saying, well, there's a problem here. However, if you change the mindset that you're thinking of, there's no problem. And that is quite extraordinary. It's the idea that words can change how reality, as opposed to words just describe the reality. And if you change those words, it doesn't matter, reality still exists.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole I remember arguing with someone who I'm no longer friends with over this issue, but for a while there I was trying to win him over, and he would say things like, you can't exclude all men, you can't judge all men this way, because what if you did that to black people, or what if you did that to some other group? And it's like, were you born yesterday? It's like an international human rights issue that women should have spaces separately from men in order to undress and be able to use the washroom and things like that. That is literally, probably UNICEF is fighting for that in rural India right now. And here we are in the West being like, oh, I've never heard of this before. We shouldn't, why do you think we have separate bathrooms for men and women? Why do you think we have separate sports for males and females? People are just acting like they've never thought this through before.
They are. I think I saw somebody tweet, must have been about a year ago now, that people would rather come across as stupid than to admit this, than to look in their eyes as unwoke or sort of what's the opposite of exclusionary? Inclusive, not inclusive. They would rather appear completely stupid and ignorant, as like the pretense that we don't know that 99% of sexual violence is committed by males. It's the same group that I don't understand who accuse women of, the ridiculous argument of, I'm going to bad argument corner. This is bad argument corner time. When people say, oh my God, it's just like segregationists back in the 60s. I'm sure I've said this before, but I came across it again this week. And the idea that that they don't also want segregation. They literally want to exclude a group of men from the men's changing rooms because these men don't act or behave or present themselves in the same way as they believe the stereotype of men should be. They literally want to exclude a group of men from the men's changing rooms, and they're calling women like Jim Crow era separatists, exclusionists. And it's insane. It's an insanely bad argument, and it's one of the worst. It's not very well thought through, because as soon as you say you also want segregation, you just want different boundaries. They don't come back.
Well, part of the problem with that, though, is the difference between imposing it on other people and people sort of voluntarily imposing it on themselves. It's sort of like choosy choice feminism, If a woman chooses to do all this stuff, that means it's okay. There's a lot of if a gender nonconforming person, in other societies, gender nonconforming people are told they have to be trans, essentially. But in here, what's happened is a gender nonconforming person feels they have to be trans because of social cues.
Yeah.
And in our society, we think that means they're choosing it for themselves, and that makes it okay. But it's really they're being coerced by social, by social pressure, and that doesn't make it good. Just because they chose it for themselves, just because somebody says a male says they feel uncomfortable in the men's changing room because they're gender nonconforming. That's no better than the other men telling that person they don't fit into that changing room. It's on themselves instead of on other people. But it's a societal, it's the same problem. You know what I mean?
Yes, people are feeding into it by saying, but they're in danger. They're in danger in the men's
exactly.
toilet.
If you tell that to a gender nonconforming person, they're going to feel it. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, if they're in danger from men, then why are you not worried about women being in danger from men?
Yes, exactly.
Because you're sending these men into the women's changing room.
You can see, especially in the bathrooms, when they never said trans women can use women's bathrooms. They said all genders can use this bathroom now. It's open season for all men. This isn't all bets are off washroom. And that was the first thing that confused me, because I was like, okay, if like an actual transsexual who's had a sex change and passes relatively well, enough that you don't want to say that you could tell, I wouldn't mind them, I was thinking, using a women's washroom necessarily, but they wouldn't want men in the women's washroom because at this point they're fully integrated into womanhood, I was thinking, right? Like a genuine transsexual who's lived their whole life as a woman probably wouldn't want men in a women's washroom any more than anyone else would, I was thinking. So I just thought this seemed anti-trans to like let all the men use the women's washrooms all of a sudden, And I've learned since then it's because you can't draw a line between like a genuine sympathetic transsexual and any other man. There's no line.
Right. And actually, this leads me to the next thing, which I think is important to address, because I believe it's another one of these political sort of statements that trans activists want to make so that people pick up on them and also parrot them. The same as which is trans women have always used women's
yes, I've heard this one.
You're the aggressors. You want things to change. You want to change. You want to ruin women's lives. Women who have been using the women's facilities for the whole of their lives, for the whole of your lives, with absolutely no problem. You're the problem. You want to change things. You want to take away our rights. And I do think that this is an important thing to address, because people are picking up on this. People like, sort of people who have just come along and are thinking, oh, yes, women are suddenly being mean. They've changed their mind. and they want to stop something that's already happening. It is the norm. It is the social convention. And they're being horrible. They are the aggressors. But it's like the idea that male violence doesn't exist, doesn't it? It's the pretense. There is no way we all know that there is no way that your average transgender person or woman who, you know, with a penis and a fully male body has been using women's changing rooms for years. No problem with women just you know, undressing next to them. This isn't true. It's a complete lie. It's an absolute lie.
What some of them mean is that, you know, someone who's had a lot of expensive facial feminization surgery, and you know, what they mean is, I have been doing it and I haven't had a problem, you know. But you know, I do know. Oh, should I tell this story?
I've been talking to this person that you are referencing, because this person publicly called me a liar on Twitter for it, and I've said to them that, you know, they might have been using these changes. They may or may not have. I don't know. But what they're arguing for is that every single male-born person with a penis who declares themselves to be a woman should have this right.
Yes,
yes. The selfishness of that position is off the scale.
Yeah,
I cannot understand how there is no point where they think, yes, okay, I need to maybe change my argument here slightly, because it's just, it's so narcissistic, isn't it? It's like, as long as I get what I want, I don't care about anyone else.
And let me add another thing to that. The idea that no one is bothered is, again, very dishonest, because obviously, if anyone kicks up a fuss, especially now at this precise moment, then they may even have the fucking police around, you know? So you don't know if anyone is bothered or not, because you have made it impossible for women to raise objections. When J.K. Rowling raised objections, those two dickhead musical writers wouldn't appear on the same TV program as her, you know? No. You have made it impossible for women to tell the truth, you know? So that argument is it's just bullshit from the start.
Here's something I've just thought about. When I was younger, and men would say, maybe start talking to me on the train or in clubs or whatever, what I would always do is be nice. Always be nice, smile, be a bit funny, just, you know, be a bit amusing, just, you know, have a little bit of banter, and then try and get away gently, because that's what women do. That's what we are brought up to do. That's what we learn to do. So these people, these men who have sort of maybe frightened me slightly in a sort of situation like that, they will have gone home and thought, there was no problem there. That was really nice. She enjoyed our company. She was funny. We were having a bit of a laugh. Whereas I myself am just thinking, shit, how can I get away? So the idea that there's no problem is that there's been no problem for you. And
also, as I always say, there's no problem for the privileged woke women of stand-up, Sarah Pascoe and Aisling B and those absolute Cariad Lloyd, who disgracefully signed an open letter against J.K. Rowling. They will not have a problem, because, you know, the Groucho Club is or Soho House are mixed toilets, in the sense that people are often popping in for a line of cocaine. It's not a problem there. It's not a problem there. So why would it be a problem in a rape crisis shelter?
Exactly.
Why would it be a problem in a homeless shelter? You know, these people are so fucking privileged. It drives me crazy. You know, they have no idea of life outside of their own celebrity bubble. You know, excuse me.
That is so true.
That is actually very true. There is. I have been occasionally to that sort of place where everyone is privileged and nice and fun. And yes, you're right. I hadn't considered that.
You go to a shelter.
Gay bars, nobody cares what gender bathroom you go to in a gay bar. So that's part of the reason a lot of gay people are like, what's all people's problems with bathrooms? It's because like, well, you know, not everything is the happy feather boa infested, you know, dance floor.
Yeah. Exactly. There was an interesting, one of the early episodes of Transparent framed the situation in a very specific way. It had a very crowded bathroom with lots of women in there. and then as I think of him, Hank from Larry Sanders in a dress comes in, and one woman who is immediately kind of tagged as a bitch starts complaining because she's with her daughter and she's saying this is disgusting and blah 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 blah, you know, and it's a big scene, and the heroes kind of challenge the woman, you bigot, and all this sort of stuff, you know, and they storm out and everything, you know. Now that's very different to that same young girl being in there unaccompanied by their mother with no one else around. And that is the situation that you get in a lot of places. Like, as you know, I know I harp on about this, but I've had so many women say to me that they have been followed around things like shopping centers by men. And the only place where they had a bit of respite, where they could hide until they phoned someone came along, were the toilets. And what they're trying to do now is they're trying to take away that little fortress that women have in public life.
Yes,
you know?
and also that portrayal is interesting as well, isn't it? That because there's a very stark difference, but it's very small between that's disgusting and I think that this is wrong. I think that women should have these spaces. That's disgusting implies that you just can't stand the idea of trans.
Transphobia. That implies you're transphobic.
Yes,
yeah.
As opposed to, I think that this is a woman's space, and I think that we should be allowed to have this. And these things are very different, but obviously it's going to be portrayed as the woman just being a bigoted, as you say, Arty, transphobe.
Yes, yes, yeah. It's again, it's just the lack of imagination, and also the kind of, you know, because the narrative is being controlled by people like the transparent writers, although I believe it's not so bad later on. I believe they go into some of the complexities of it with a bit more nuance later on.
Do they ever admit that that person's just an autogynephile, though?
I don't know if they do. But you know, the narrative is being very, very strictly controlled by you know, people in the media. And again, one of the fascinating things about this is these beliefs, which are based on queer theory and are crazy, are not shared by anyone outside the media. The Guardian journalists who signed that letter against Suzanne Moore, no one agrees with that shit outside of the Guardian. You know, they're just in a kind of hothouse produced by their own opinions. And you know, no one. The reason, for instance, the Guardian will never write about the Tavistock revelations that the Sunday Times have written about, even if it's an investigation into whether those claims stand up, is because they just can't, because they know it's true, and they know if they investigate it, their American readership and their asshole tech employees will rebel. You know,
that's right.
So it's. You know,
I did see somebody I've seen in the comments somebody mentioning Primer Screen. I did see somebody saying that it's quite extraordinary to see the sort of the woke leftists praising the Bank of England and dissing Primer Screen.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's great.
I was pretty surprised by that. I was happy to see that. Oh my
God. I mean, it is the most corporate. Civil rights movement of all time.
Have today, though, come back and saying we 100% support trans rights.
Yeah.
However, somebody asked them, "What about women's rights?" And they said, "No, we absolutely 100% support women's rights too."
Yeah.
So I feel that they've got themselves into a little bit of a mess here, given that these rights do conflict.
Yeah, but I mean, I support trans rights too, as in the right to not be fired for being trans, the right to not lose your housing, the right to as much, you know, psychiatric care as you need. Yeah.
I don't see it as being the thing that the other side are trying to do is they're trying to make it impossible to support trans rights and women's rights at the same time. But as we all know, it's entirely possible to support trans rights and women's rights at the same time. If it wasn't possible, we wouldn't have so many trans allies in this fight, you know?
No, that's true.
it's
That's
nonsense.
true. No, I appreciated Primal Scream's saying.
I think they've been great.
That's just fantastic, actually. And we just need more people to say just a gentle, yes, I support freedom of speech. I can support trans rights and I can support women's rights. Obviously, there's an issue where these rights, depends what rights they ask for, conflict. But like we've said in so many times, it's a very small area and we ought to be able to work it out. However,
the gaming website. Oh, Artie's gone.
Where's he gone?
Oh, I don't know. We'll get back to it. The gaming website, Rock, Paper, Scissors, recently fired one of their columnists for saying that there should be at least a talk about it. And they fired him, along with a self-serving, pompous statement about how he won't be working for us again. What a bunch of arseholes. Here he is.
It was extraordinary.
Artie, you stormed out.
I'm sick of you lot.
Hey, listen, I don't want to finish without reading this that I got today. Can
we just say,
what are we doing?
It's come.
Yay!
What's gone? Oh,
My
yay! Yay! Excellent. Good. Excellent. Right. Let me read this. I got this today. I didn't want to finish without mentioning this one because it's extraordinary. Someone wrote to me and said, "Hi, Greg. Among the several things that drew me into this fight was something I rarely hear mentioned in GC circles. It's the swift and early takeover of the natural birthing movement. Le Lèche League, though, has been often mentioned among the GC. Throughout their first decades, they were abundantly clear in their support of women's special, irreplaceable role in providing babies perfect first food, the importance of babies' connection to mothers, and the importance of fathers' support of the nursing relationship. They now are proponents of fetishistic males taking a cocktail of harmful drugs to produce a toxic fluid from their male nipples." Sorry, even reading it, I can barely to offer to hungry babies. There must be women who witnessed the hard and ugly turnaround of LLL. I'd love to hear about it. What hasn't been much talked about is the takeover of the tiny women-focused natural birth movement. If any of you find time, and then she links to a video that I'll share later on. But my God, are you fucking kidding? Every day you'd find out something new that is just,
I did see
grotesque.
I did see
child abuse, yes.
A year or so ago about that article that was written saying, men can now breastfeed. And it turned out it was written by a trans woman and it didn't really have, saying that I breastfed for 6 weeks with this, just taking these drugs or whatever. And it was all great. But there was no actual sort of evidence or, peer review sort of literature there. And so we were thinking, is it even true? However, I have seen people now in the last sort of month or so defend it. I've seen, and this is what's interesting, the idea that some women who can't breastfeed, they take drugs in order to simulate get the milk flowing. And so it's okay for men to do it. Now, I don't know how, I don't actually know the ins and outs of women who do take drugs to breastfeed. But what I do know is that if a man wants to breastfeed, he's not doing it for the baby.
Very true. Very true.
Perfectly said. Exactly. Yeah.
And someone just asked, did women fight against the? Someone just asked, did women fight against the madness? I think we all know what's happening in every single organization. It's made. I've got. I think a big story coming up about the WEP again, because it seems to me that the WEP have been exaggerating their membership, while actually taking donations from a very, very small amount of people, including a Google employee, John Skeet, who's given them something like £90,000 over 3 years. Now, that is a lot of money for a small organization. And I believe that the WEP is being used not to promote women's rights, but to suppress them. I think they are being paid by people like John Skeet to say trans women are women and to fall into line, basically. So
That's
I think.
Sorry. Astroturfing.
Yes, exactly.
Astroturfing. Corporations pretending to be grassroots organizations. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at what happened, Helen Watts of Girl Guiding, she tried to fight it, and she lost her Girl Guide group. This is what happens to women who step out of line. And if we mistake the silence of those women because they've been removed from their positions and they've been removed from YouTube and Twitter and all these things, if we mistake that silence for consent, then that would be such a tragedy, because it's such a lack of imagination to not realize that sometimes, as it says in the Sherlock Holmes story, the clue is the dog that didn't bark. Sometimes the clue is the thing that doesn't happen, the voices you don't hear, the people you don't see, and the fights that we don't hear about, So we've all got to dig deeper. And also, I think, if you're in an organization where you think you can safely fight back, for instance, if you're being asked to put your pronouns in your signature, and you think you can safely fight back, please fight back, because this stuff, you may not think it matters. You may think it's just a simple ask. It's not. It's being used against women all over the world at the moment. And,
yes,
we all need to do our bit.
I think you're right. And it's small, isn't it? It's the death of 1,000 cuts. This is, there's no problem with pronouns. What's the problem? It's just nice for everyone. What's the problem with pregnant people? It's just inclusive and nice. But, you're asking to include a tiny amount of people by excluding the vast majority of the words that they have to describe themselves. I saw earlier a non-binary journalist saying that they felt excluded when they went to ob-gynae exams because it was women's reproductive health. But really the idea that you can just to include non-binary women by excluding the whole of the rest of women from the words they have to describe themselves it's insane.
Well, I'm gonna share a screen just to share one quick tweet. If I can do that, just hold on 1 second. Oh no, I'll just read it out. Sal Grover. She said, "Woman is the inclusive word. There's 3 billion of us. It's that simple. It's that simple.
Yes.
Woman is already an inclusive word. Now I've lost the StreamYard page, so I can't see you guys. Oh no, there you go. Okay. I had to check the number because whenever anyone says an amount, Arty's paying close attention. Arty, you were just frozen in this position for like 30 seconds.
It was very good.
Whenever there's an amount, I can never remember what it was. So I could have said there's 86 billion of us, or there's 200 billion of us, and I wouldn't know. And
you know what? I probably wouldn't have noticed. I know that there are 65 million people in Britain.
All right. What? Oh, are there? Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, we're on our 53rd minute. Is there anything else we'd like to talk about before we wrap up? I'm going to speak to Derek Jensen tonight for video.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Wow.
Hey, Arty, would you be up for having a look and seeing if you'd like to do your usual job on it? This is really not something I should be saying in front of everyone.
Absolutely.
Great. Don't feel any pressure, even though we're live.
No pressure.
Sorry.
No, I got tomorrow off.
Oh.
I day off tomorrow, so I can do it tomorrow.
Yeah. You need to spend tomorrow fixing your internet connection. I would say that would be the most important thing.
I'm afraid you are frozen there saying off.
Sorry.
Yeah. All right.
But you looked extraordinarily cute. Extraordinarily cute.
As always. Well, listen, guys, it was lovely to talk to you, and I will see you next week. Should we try and make it every week at Wednesday at 4 so people know when to turn up for us? Should we? I'm afraid
that some weeks I'm on an early shift, which means I finish 3:30. But some weeks I'm on a later shift and I have to do it at lunchtime. But let's try. let's try and do it. I mean, Arty, is that okay for you with your work?
Yeah, that works for me.
Okay,
Yep.
I will certainly try. I'll certainly try.
We'll aim for that, folks. If it's not going to be 4 o'clock on Wednesday, it'll hopefully be Wednesday at some point. And if it's not that, it'll hopefully be Tuesday or Thursday. But we'll aim for Wednesday at 4 o'clock. Thank you very much to everyone. Lovely to talk to, or lovely to kind of talk to myself. and these two didn't really talk to anyone else. Thank you for pointing out that troll. I got rid of him. And we shall see you all soon. Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Press the button.